This week's Player of the Week, sponsored by the LC Sports and Rec, goes to a 4th grade boy, Asher Mangrum of the Bulldogs. Coach Mark wrote to us and said that at the very beginning, Asher made clear to his coach, which is also his dad, he never wanted the Player of the Week. He just wanted other people on his team to get it. Man, that's awesome. So this week, Mark, his dad and coach, gave him the Player of the Week just because he's hustled all season long. He's been consistent. He's been a great team player. So Asher, good job. You are this week's Player of the Week. This week's Coach of the Week goes to 5th and 6th grade boys, Cougars, Mr. Josh McDonald. Man, Josh is awesome. This is his last year in the league, and we are sad about that because this guy is a true gem. The way that he handles the purpose of the league, which is to create a positive sports experience for his players, man, he always does that. He keeps the main thing, even through conflict. So, Josh, great job. You are this week's Coach of the Week, sponsored by Exquisite Lawns. Exquisite Irrigation and Landscaping is a full-service commercial and residential landscaping, irrigation, and lawn maintenance company serving all of DFW. They're currently taking on new clients, so if you need some help with your lawn, just give them a call or go to their website, exquisitelawns.com. Welcome to episode 33 of Winning with the Home Team. I'm Katrina. Man, today we've got a man down. Our boy Todd, he has been hit with whatever is going around and swimming around in the world. He is better, but if you see him, if you're in the DFW area and you see him, give him a hug or a pat on the back, and then probably go wash your hands and tell him that it's good to see him. Welcome back from the dead. Hey, we had basketball games last week on Saturday. We also had makeup games all week last week, and they went well. So the basketball season, we're pushing through. Actually, this Saturday is our second to last game. All the older kids will start their tournaments, so it'll be super fun. So since Todd isn't here, we've got a special guest, Mr. Jared Scott. Jared, what's up?
What's up?
What's up?
What's up?
Jared, how long have I known you? How long have you been on staff?
I've been on staff for, what's today? The 6th. It'll be 11 months next week.
11 months.
Yeah.
Jared is our discipleship pastor.
Yep.
At Lake Church. And he does a great job.
Oh, thank you. Shucks.
So, Jared, props to saying yes to this, first of all, last minute. Less than 24 hours, I would say.
Yeah, flexibility. Yeah. That's the key.
I was trying to wait on Todd, but yeah, we had to get it done, and so I'm glad that you're here.
Man, I had what he had, so I get it.
Yeah, last week, right?
Last week. I had a bunch of meetings on Sunday, and I was like, I can make it. And no, there's
psych.
No way.
Just kidding. Yep, for sure.
No way.
Was psych a word when you were growing up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm a 90s kid. I'm a legit 90s kid.
Cool. Nice.
No.
Well, today we're talking again about toughness. Last episode we talked about toughness. Today specifically, we want to talk about the difference between strength and toughness. Our players are going through the virtue of toughness this week. And Jared, what would you say is the difference between strength, which if you're searching for toughness in the Bible, I don't know that you'll find that word.
Yeah.
You do find strength.
You find strength, though. Yeah.
So how would you define toughness versus strength?
Yeah. From our current cultural context, strength is how much can I move and how much can I push, and what can I carry? Where toughness is how my mental fortitude. Can I overcome difficulty and still function?
Yeah.
And I think those two things are very different in how we handle those things. Where I think biblically strength would probably fall more into toughness.
I would agree.
But currently, we think of strength of how much can someone pick up? How much can you deadlift in an athletic sense? But someone who's tough, how hard can you take a hit and still think clearly?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of deadlift, how much can you deadlift? I know that you're a guy that works out.
currently 345.
Where would you like to be?
I would like to hit 400.
Wow.
I don't want to do what I did in high school. You know, like most people in their 30s, like my point in life, everyone's like, I want to do what I did in high school.
No, you don't.
No, I don't.
Stop thinking like that.
I did over 700 pounds in high school. There's like the thought of that is ridiculous.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah. And so, kind of going off of that, right? Like strength, I would agree with you. Strength involves physicality.
Mm-hmm.
It involves a training component to that, right? So
Yeah.
you're just not going to go to the LC and, pick up 400 and think that you could do it, right?
No.
Like, I mean, you could do that, but you'd probably be silly.
Yeah.
Or the word that you would use is stupid.
Stupid. Which, to be stupid, you got to be tough.
So we'll talk about that. I want to get into
real.
that. I want to get into that and what you mean. So I would agree. Strength involves physicality.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that you said a key word, culturally.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we think of when we think of strength. I think of strength as something that you can train to.
Yeah.
Right? So like last episode, I mentioned that, 20 years ago, if you asked me, who is the toughest person that you know, I probably would have put, I would have replaced toughness with strength.
Okay.
And I would have said, anyone who consistently runs marathons.
Okay.
Like, because that's what I value, right? Like when I think of strength, I think of things that I value, physically wise. Today is a different story, right? Whereas toughness, I would say is an adverse situation or something that maybe that you're thrown into, or a situation that's happened that you have to go through. And the way that you go through it will determine how toughness you are. Toughness you are?
Toughness you are. That works. That still works.
Tough
Grammar.
you are, for sure. So to that end, like, do you think toughness can be taught?
Yes. I think the mental and physical side of toughness can be taught. I used to train quarterbacks privately.
Uh-huh.
And they would always have to sign a waiver.
Were you quarterback in high school?
I did. Well, I was for a little bit when I was going through the whole like recruiting cycle. I went to some schools to be a quarterback.
Uh-huh.
That whole thing, but I really
Did
played
you say
linebacker.
like blue 42?
I did not say blue 42. I would call out colors in certain plays when I walked up on the line. Yeah.
Like fuchsia?
I would use I do like black. I don't think we use black, green, yellow.
Baby blue?
We use lightning.
Lightning.
We did use lightning.
That's fun.
We use raider and tiger. We use a lot of
Nice.
animals.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, those colors and animals had different types of plays. And this is ridiculous because this is 16 years ago. I can still probably recall my entire junior year playbook from straight memory
That's crazy.
and draw it.
Yeah, isn't that
Yeah,
crazy?
it
The
is
things that we
insane.
remember.
Yeah.
So you train quarterbacks?
Yeah, so I trained
Okay.
quarterbacks for a couple of years. And what I would do is I would literally stand in there about a foot away and I'd make them step into a throw and I'd push them over at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
So I would lean into them as they were taking the step to throw and I'd push them over. Because you have to get through your head that I can take a hit and I can still think when I know I'm going to get hit in the face. And teaching kids how to do that is very difficult because the first thing they want to do is, instead of taking a full step and hip rotation, is they want to pull back and go off their back foot, which as a quarterback makes everything sail high or come out real slow. And so that's when people get picked off really well. So Eli Manning is a big example of that in the NFL, someone who throws off his back foot. That's why a lot of people hated him as a quarterback, because he would turn his hips, take a step back and throw, and it would look like a duck. And that's where it come from. So I'd always try to teach kids how to fight through that mental block because when you see a big guy coming at you, like I'll never forget, this kid was like 6'3". He was like 240. He actually was going to go somewhere on a scholarship. I was a walk-on player at best. Like I would go on recruiting visits and they'd be like, well, we need a moving tackling dummy. Like that was as good as I was going to get. Like I knew that. I knew where I was. I'm 5'10". In high school, I was like 230, 240, which is way too big for a 5'10" guy. Like I knew where I stood, but this kid came at me and I just remember thinking like, I'm going to die. But because I stepped into a throw and made it when he still hit me, like that was one of the things. Like I got to go to Houston to meet Coach Kevin Sumlin and Cliff Kingsbury. Like Cliff Kingsbury knew me by name. Like he came and found me in the middle of a room.
Cool. Wow.
And it's all because and he would say, because you can be tough enough to make throws.
Yeah.
And take hits. And so you can force that into people. But part of it also is what goes on at home. So I can teach you the physical side of toughness and learn how to take a hit, but can you process? I don't know. That's a really good question. I think there is this ability, and we have shown that we can teach people how to process. I think that is the mental side of toughness is much harder to teach.
Yeah.
Much more difficult to teach than the physical side. I don't know. What do you think?
That's good. As I was putting together this outline, it's kind of funny how things come up that you realize, maybe I'm not as tough as I think I am.
Yeah.
We went on a bike ride last night. Actually, Taya was on a bike, and then Dean and I were walking. We were walking the dog. And we were about, I would say, 1.5 miles in, and Taya was done. Like, she was done.
Nice.
Over it. And at that point, when your kid is off of their bike on the middle, and this is on Mayfield, right? So there's traffic.
Yeah.
Right? There's traffic. And you're that parent that is looking at their kid when their kid has dropped their bike and they're on the floor crying, right? And you're thinking,
nightmare scenario.
yes, surely, like, hey, like, where we are, right? Like, we only have a little bit more to go. And so in my mind, there was a little bit of me was like, you know what? I'm not that tough. Because in my mind, I was frustrated.
Yeah.
Like, surely you're not tired.
Yeah.
Like, you're 5 years old and you have the energy of like a hyena. Like, surely you're not tired. And the frustration that builds inside of you, right? Like, and I told Dean, I was like, surely she's not tired, right? But I said it in a much more elevated tone to my husband. She didn't hear me. So under those circumstances, parenting brings out a different side of toughness in you.
Yeah.
Without a shadow of a doubt. And I don't know that we will ever reach the pinnacle of toughness. I think toughness also requires patience, especially when you're dealing with kids, right? And even coaching, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like when you were training that quarterback, there's an aspect of, hey, come on, dude, like, you got this, like, of patience that's needed.
Yeah, junior high kids were not for me. High school kids only. Yeah, I couldn't do it.
Yeah, and I'm a little bit more specific. Seniors only.
Oh,
seniors only.
I like freshmen. I can hit them.
They're still junior hires to me.
You can't hit freshmen. You can't do that. That was a joke.
Yeah, but yeah. So to that end, I think I think toughness is something that is continually learned, and it's very circumstantial.
Yeah,
it's very circumstantial.
Yeah,
and you're not tested to know how tough you are until you're in the heat of it.
Yeah, like you can't run. You can do as many scenarios as you want, but when it's go time, whether it's on the field or at home as a parent, like, you just don't know how you're going to react.
Yeah.
If you ever listen to Navy SEALs, they'll tell you the guy who lifts the most weights and runs the most miles typically is the first to quit because they're not mentally tough. And that guy that's 140 pounds soaking wet, he'll sit there and he'll ride it out to prove a point.
Yep. Yeah.
That mental toughness is a lot better than that physical strength.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yesterday on our walk bike scenario, I didn't pick up the bike for Taya. Like, we just walked on. And I thought to myself, she's got to figure it out. So maybe I'm the opposite of a coddling parent. Like, I'm like the direct
You are the
opposite.
tough parent.
But I asked that question, do you think toughness can be taught? I don't know that it can be taught in words. But I think it can be modeled. I think it can be learned.
Yeah.
And do you do that with words? Yeah. I mean, yeah, you do. But yeah, I think it's modeled for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So going back to your childhood, right?
Yeah. Okay.
Who would you say, is the toughest person that you know? Or not even childhood. Like, maybe it's just right now. Who's the toughest person, under our definition of toughness? Who would you say that is?
Right now, I would say the gentleman who I call my dad. He's not my biological dad, but he is my dad. I would say he is the toughest person. And And we've had to work through a lot of different things as not being a biological child. He has his own biological children. They're my best friends. Him and his wife were my mother's best friends when she was alive, and there's a lot of history there.
Yeah.
But he was a fireman, just retired, and he looks out for not only his biological kids, but his sister, his cousins. He looks out for us, and he really has taught us how to function in the midst of difficulty and death, how to persevere in physical situations. He also played college football. He taught us a lot about sports. He taught us how to fix houses. He taught us how to fix cars. And he also taught us how to work through death, how to make conscious and yet unemotional decisions so you can actually embrace the emotion of mourning. And for me, that shows a display of real mental and physical toughness to do all of those things well. Yeah. Not perfect. He is definitely not perfect. If you're watching this, just remember, Pops, you are not perfect. But he's pretty daggone close. Yeah. But my biological mother, I think, is probably one of the toughest ladies I had ever met. I tell my wife this a lot. I'm not tough enough to be a woman. Like, I watched my wife give birth twice now, and I went, oh my goodness.
Did you know that Dawn Staley, a week and a half ago, so the Tennessee coach, Kim Caldwell, had her first baby, and when a reporter asked Dawn Staley what she thought about Kim Caldwell and her return back on the court, not even a week after Kim Caldwell gave birth, Dawn Staley said, "Women are 10 times tougher than men."
I agree. My lung collapsed. I played a whole football game with a collapsed lung, which you should not do. I think I'd rather let my lung collapse and go through that whole ordeal again than ever think about childbearing. My wife we had a son 10 months ago.
Yeah.
She did it without medication. Like, she just straight up did her thing and she crushed it.
Yeah.
She killed it. I'm still impressed to this day. Yeah. Not only was she strong in that moment, like, she had mental fortitude and toughness to get through that situation. And as soon as he came out, like, she started taking care of him. Yeah. She got up and walked within a couple hours.
That's amazing.
I was sitting there going, good night.
Yeah. Yeah.
What am I supposed to do?
Yeah. What am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do?
Yeah, I was like, how am I
supposed to model toughness to my wife when my wife just popped out a kid with no drugs and is up walking?
Doing her thing like nothing ever happened.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So, yeah, my mom, she had cancer my entire life. Like, I don't remember her not being sick. And having the flu last week with I have 3 kids under 2.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking, how did my mom do this for 16 years? I was 16 when she passed. I think, how did she take care of 2 kids by herself while having breast, bone, and liver cancer?
Wow. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah.
What does your mind go to? Like, when you had that thought?
She was tough. She was tough. I mean, she was extremely intelligent. She knew when to give in and when to not to. Yeah. She worked most of my life, even with those difficult situations. But she also made sure, like, we rested well. We were in places where we were safe. There's a lot to all that story. But she taught me how to be tough. Like, I still have this vision where my sophomore year of high school, I played linebacker. And I remember I was just so defeated one game. And at halftime, she always sat on the right side of the end zone. She walked over during halftime and pulled me aside and got in my face.
What'd she say?
Oh, she told me I needed to grow up. She said, "Stop hanging your head. Get your butt up. Let's go." And
that's what I'm talking
about. She got in my face. Yeah. And, like, I ended up having 2 sacks that game. Post that, and made a couple other good plays. And my mom told me, she goes, "You were a different person in that second half." And I think about that story a lot because it changed the trajectory of my toughness in that moment to hear someone care enough to get in my face and show me what it means to be tough, not be strong, right? Like I said, I wasn't super strong. I wasn't super athletic. I mean, deadlifting's over 700 pounds. That is ridiculously strong. But, like, pushing people around only goes so far until you get popped in the jaw. Who cares how strong you are? You get popped in the jaw. Yeah. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But if you can get back up and keep on fighting, that's toughness.
Yeah.
To be able to go through that and go, okay, I got hit. It's okay.
Yeah.
I'm alive. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
It did hurt, but I can keep going.
Yeah.
How much can you get pushed back? How many times can you get up when you get pushed down?
That's good. And comically, I'm thinking about the scenario of all the Maverick fans right now who feel like
This is a sensitive
they
topic.
have been pushed down with the Luka trade.
Are you a Mavs fan?
I don't care. I think professional sports is a joke, and they get paid too much money.
Oh, no, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Brother's about to make $245 million.
And related to this podcast, I don't think a single one of them are tough.
Oh,
I mean, they're strong.
not a single.
I should not say that. That is putting every single one
Yeah.
of them into one bucket. So
Yeah.
I will take that statement away.
Is there degrees of toughness?
Well, certainly.
Yeah.
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 I mean, yeah, for sure. And I think the degree of toughness can only be defined by what you've been through in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. Because I would say most people are tough enough in professional athletics. Most people are tough enough to do what they need to do on the field, on the court, in the octagon. Like I think about all the UFC fighters, like Anderson Silva, Anderson Spider Silva, one of the toughest people you'll ever watch fight.
Yeah.
One of the best fighters I ever saw fight. One of the most arrogant human beings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And
And to me, that does not translate to toughness.
No, you can be you can be tough in a situation, right? He has been trained. He is a fighter, but that's
Yeah.
all he knows. But
Yeah.
outside, is he
That's
still
strength.
tough? Yeah.
That's strength, in my opinion.
Okay.
That's not toughness.
I think
Yeah.
a tough person could be someone on the field, but like they're not tough enough to be a parent at home or a spouse
Yeah.
and work through that. And I know that's a whole other
Yeah.
subject.
Yeah.
But
Well, going back to what you said earlier, like I think toughness also encompasses emotional intelligence, right? Like I think that you hinted on that a little bit.
yeah.
But yeah, going back to professional sports and the degrees of toughness, yeah, I think that toughness can only be measured by your circumstance and how you got through it.
Yeah.
And then going back to, I don't think, arrogance is the opposite of toughness.
True that.
I think arrogance is only, an insecurity that you have that's wrapped up in your pride. I think true toughness is measured by your humility.
Mm-hmm.
And let's get to this question. So talking about those who follow Jesus.
Okay.
Right? How has toughness been defined differently for those who follow Jesus and those who don't? Or sometimes are they the same?
I mean, I think in the grand scheme of things, we're getting all theological here. The grand scheme of things, they're the same, right? Because at the end of the day, we're all going to have to answer to the same person.
Mm-hmm. Regardless of who you follow or
Regardless
not.
of who you follow,
Yeah.
regardless of your beliefs, if the Bible is true, what it says is true, it doesn't matter what we believe, it's going to happen,
Yeah.
right? I don't like the saying when it's like the Bible said it, I believe it, or the Bible says it, whatever, blah, 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 like I believe it, and that's what matters. And it's like, no, the Bible said it, I believe it. Like that's like the Lord said it. That's as far as I need to go.
Yeah.
Like his truth has nothing to do with my belief. His truth is truth. Anyway, but the toughness of, I believe, people use spirituality as a crutch, Christianity as a crutch. Well, yes, because I'm broken and I need something to pick it up, and I'm tough enough, and my toughness comes from the reliance of where my crutch is.
Yep.
What has built me up, right? Like I said, my adopted father has made me a tougher person by his example because he's picked me up and taught me to be tough.
Yeah.
Just as I think the Lord picks us up
Yep.
and teaches us how to be tough,
Yep.
right? Job, I think Job is a
Yep.
great example of toughness, right? Just chapter 1.
Yep.
Just you don't need to read any
Yeah.
further than that,
Yeah.
right?
The dude went
Whoa,
through it.
yeah. He's
Man.
rich. He has everything. This and that. And within 5 seconds, the
Gone.
Lord's like, take it all away. And
Yep.
he tears his shirt in
Man.
sadness and
Yeah.
goes, the Lord gives and he takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. And he sounds joy. He still mourns,
Yeah.
right? So he has the toughness and the fortitude to think clearly in those moments and to realize this is but just a minute.
Yeah. And that goes back to emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, everything was taken away from him, yet he still said, the Lord gives and the Lord takes away.
Yeah.
And he continued to mourn.
Mhm.
Like he didn't say, well, all right, guess I don't have any of this.
Yeah.
Let's move on. Like if you read the rest of Job, like, I mean, he there's a lot that's in there
Yeah.
that we could talk about for
You get to
days.
wrestle with it with him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a good thing. I also think about, probably a story that most people know, David and Goliath.
Yep.
Right? David, the small guy, Goliath, super big guy, strength, strong, he's got, what is it, 7 foot something?
8.
8.
Almost 9 foot.
The guy's tall. And then David comes out there with a little rock and a little sling and just trust God. I think that's huge. I think that shows humility.
Yeah. Do you think, because you're a little bit older than I am, we're not going to talk about our age difference.
Whoa.
We'll just say that.
Yikes.
Do you think that American culture is still learning what it means to be emotionally intelligent?
I mean, I would say 100%. And I would say this, emotional intelligence is different. I mean, there's emotional intelligence, and then there's emotional intelligence that's built through faith.
Yeah, that's also very true.
So, yeah, I mean, you can read a ton of self-help books about emotional intelligence and what to do. But, if there's not a faith component behind it, if there's not a humility or a surrendering, when I think of toughness, I also think of the word endure.
Okay. I agree.
Right? If you are going through a situation, you're having to endure it. Toughness is gonna bleed through that.
Yeah.
And the only way to successfully get through that, even with your emotional intelligence, truly, is to get through it with the Lord.
Yeah.
Like your adopted dad. He made the decision that was based on decisions that you had to make so that you could mourn later.
Yeah.
Is what you said.
Yeah.
I think that's huge in modeling to a young man. How old were you at the time?
I was 16.
16.
Yeah.
How decisions have to be made.
Yeah.
And yet still, we can deal with our emotions.
Yeah. And even in that scenario, when all that happened, my biological sister was 18. We were both still in high school, and we never moved in with anybody else. We didn't live with my adoptive parents. We actually had a conversation about that last night, even just why didn't that happen? I always just wondered. He's like, your mom, before she passed, asked us not to, he said, trust. She told us to trust you, which was not a good idea, which as a 33-year-old guy now, yeah, that was a horrible idea. A 16-year-old and 18-year-old in the house by themselves in high school. That was a horrible idea. But my adoptive parents, they sat in there and they did what they needed to do to try to help us grow up, even from a distance. And I didn't call them my parents for another 5 years almost.
Wow.
It was a rough, probably 5 years between us three. But they sat in, they still did the right thing.
Yeah.
And kept promises and had faith.
Yeah.
Because again, my faith, where I'm at today, is largely to do with them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And their faithfulness in the Lord and His strength, and teaching us that as well.
So you were 16.
Yeah.
And you didn't call them mom and dad until 5 years later.
Yeah.
So in that, what was that 5 years like in regards to toughness?
See, my mom died in March, and in September, my lung collapsed and I almost died.
What happened to your lung?
Let's see. I was playing tight end.
Okay.
I was playing. We were playing football. I was playing tight end, slot receiver, and I just ran somebody over, and it just cracked my ribs. And so I cracked 4 on this side. I cracked 1 on this side, on my left side.
Who got you through that?
Me. I drove up. I'm Choctaw American, and if you don't know this, if you can prove that you have Native American lineage, you get a card and all this jazz, and I had all that stuff. So I just drive 4 hours and get free healthcare up there, and drive back. Then 2 weeks later, I got cleared to play again, because you can play football with broken ribs. People do that all the time. Which is that toughness or strength? I don't know. Doing it, I feel like I'm pretty damn tough to play with broken ribs. And 2 weeks later, the guy that was playing quarterback got hurt, so I went in as quarterback. And the very first play, it was all goes. I threw it on the outside, and as I released the ball, this kid's helmet just goes straight into those broke ribs, and you heard him crack. You heard him. It was bad. And I'm on the ground, and I hear people yelling, and the ref comes over and he goes, "You all right?" I said, is the yelling good or bad for me? And he goes, good. I said, cool, help me up.
Yeah.
And he was laughing with me, and a couple plays later, he goes, if I would have said bad, what are you doing? I said, I would have laid on the ground. I would have just stayed on the ground. And so that's when my lung collapsed, but I kept playing, and it was rough. There's a video on YouTube where you can see the final hit that knocks me out, and you just see me kicking my legs because I thought my spine broke. I thought it was my spine. So my first thought was, am I paralyzed? But I was able to kick my legs. We went home. I did things that you shouldn't do to cope with that situation. Because again, a 6-year-old, 18-year-old in the house.
Wow. Yeah.
I did have a very bad drug problem for a little bit.
Yeah.
And so I did what I did to get through that. And the next day, Ben Hogan still has a clinic. I don't know if they still do it today, but it used to be free on Saturdays. And we went there where it was 10 minutes to closing time. And so I barely got in, and they took scans and went, hey, you're dying. Because my lung had filled a little bit over halfway with blood.
Wow.
Because it had just been dripping all night into my lungs.
Yeah.
So I was literally drowning in my own blood.
Wow.
So I spent the next week and a half in a hospital with a tube in my side. Spent 3 months at home. Couldn't go outside because, Texas is super humid. So the pressure just put a lot of pressure on my lungs. So I missed 3 months of school.
Wow. And you were 16
I
at
was
the time.
16. Yeah, 16 on our own.
On your own.
And we had some good friends. I say good friends, close friends, also our age, a little bit older, probably not. Definitely also did not help in the wise decisions.
Right.
But I was stupid, so I was tough. Because I just always remember, in order to be tough, you gotta be, or if you're gonna be stupid, you gotta be tough. So I could take hits. I could work through that. And we did have some very loving and caring people. We had been going to church. I knew a lot of church people. Our church at the time was doing the best they could to care for us. Daniel Sweet is the pastor still at the church we attended. He was there the entire week. My mom was on hospice. He did what he could or what he knew how to do. So I learned a lot of toughness in that. A lot of resilience, I think, is key in toughness, to work through the mental loopholes of pain and hurt, and then all the emotional things. Now, granted, I think 16 years ago, going to counseling was for crazy people, and antidepressants were for crazy people, and which now we've kind of really fought that stigma in a good way, I think. And eventually I did get on antidepressants for a time period, and that was a whole roller coaster of emotion. But yeah, it took 5 years of this roller coaster of, is it strength and toughness? And at times it was toughness, and at times it was just I can just muscle my way through this, right? You can push yourself out of a box if you're stuck in the middle of a maze, but that doesn't mean you're smart. It doesn't mean you're tough. It just means you can just push everything over.
Yeah.
It was rough. It was a rough 5 years. It was still rough then. Past that, it was about another 4 years before things got calm. Yeah. So
where did Jesus come in?
So where Jesus came in, my mom. Wow, this turned into an interview about my life.
I told you we might bring something else up.
This is bait and switch. That's what happened.
No, it wasn't.
So my biological dad, very aware of who God is. I've shared the gospel with him many times. But he never was a follower, never a faithful follower. My mom was, my grandparents were. So we grew up going to church, kind of in and out. So there was always this background in my head. So I knew all the answers. I feel like I can be a fairly intelligent person sometimes. And so I knew the answers. And I think this is where that the connection comes through of toughness and strength. Yeah. Even in a discipleship sense of, but it never connected. Like there was no action that ever came out of scripture in my house or in my brain. Yeah. And I remember the day when my mom died. It was Saturday, March 8th. It was a Saturday morning. It was 40-ish, something like that. And we had people at the house all week. So finally at around 8 p.m., everyone was finally gone. It was just me alone in my room. And I just remember hearing this voice going, are you following your mom or are you following me? And I remember like that was the first time I had ever cried out to God saying, I want to follow you. And that was the moment I gave my life to Christ. Now granted, 6-year-old already had some bad habits, got, because of injuries, got into a lot of the opioid pandemic, being a part of that. I definitely did not figure that out. Also, I'm a really good liar, or I used to be. I'm not anymore. Oh. Praise God. So everyone just assumed everything was going okay at home for me, when it just wasn't, because I knew how to get through all the red tape. So secretly, I was just really struggling, and some people knew it. But I started getting involved in church more. My youth pastors at the time, we had some in and out, but they would speak truth into my life. And I would lean into that. And so I always had this battle, but because I had no emotional intelligence, nobody knew how to really, like, how do you handle a 16-year-old who just lost his mother?
I have no idea.
Yeah. How do you, like, everyone around me right at that point had no idea what to do. So they did the best they could. But I can look back and just see where the Lord really intervened in a lot of those ways, whether it be through people, through situations. My adoptive family really fought and spoke into those moments. And I always knew when we didn't have money for food for whatever reason, I could just walk over to their house and eat.
Yeah.
And they always made sure to grab me and go to church. They always made sure to on Sunday, if I didn't show up, they would leave church, come to my house, whether I was awake or not, get me out of bed and throw me into the car. So I see the Lord's faithfulness through his people. And I got to hear a lot, and the faithfulness of that impacted my life. The faithful of somebody who saw somebody lost and lost. They invested so well, even when it wasn't convenient for them.
Yeah.
And not only me, like I think about all the friends we had at that time that they really poured into. And some of them became faithful followers of Jesus, and some of them didn't.
Yeah.
But whether they did or did not, they were going to invest well.
Yeah.
And it was hard on them, but they were tough enough, and they believed that God's strength would get them through it, and still do. And they still talk about it. So the Lord really used those times through other people in the midst of my hardship to, one, show me who his character is, and two, to make me tough as nails for what I think now being in ministry, which, as you know, working at church it is really fun. Like we get to do a lot of fun stuff. We get to have tons of cool experiences because of that. But like when crud hits the fan and someone's on suicide watch, or a family member unexpectedly passed away, or kids are getting bullied and parents need help, they're calling you. They don't care what time. They don't care. I mean, they do, but you get what I'm saying? Like, like they're thinking of themselves, and our call and responsibility as shepherds is to shepherd them in that moment. And I think because of that, the Lord has really got to use that in my life. Think about how often, I remember feeling ostracized, not by other people, just mentally, because it was weird that I didn't have parents. It was weird that I had a single parent and an abusive other parent. It was weird. And now that's the norm.
Yeah.
And so I'm able to speak into so many people's lives in a different way because of those experiences. And I can rejoice in that. It still was difficult and hard, and I still mourn over it. Like, like my kids will never know my mother. And that's hard for me.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think my kids are better off because of those situations.
Yeah.
And I think
that happened to you.
Yeah, that happened to me. And I think other kids are better off because that happened to me, because I can speak into their lives and sit and mourn with them.
Yeah. I just love how God uses all of our junk and all of our circumstances to benefit other people, and to speak life into their life, speak truth into their life.
It's hard, but it's worth it.
Yeah. Yeah.
As athletes, you think about all the practices. I think about all the suicides I ran during varsity basketball. But I remember winning games and going, those suicides that made me throw up my guts, worth it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Worth it.
Yeah. Turning the dime, back to sports. What do you think is lacking in today's youth sports culture, in regards to toughness?
Oh, man. I think basketball displays this really well. Every player wants to be Steph Curry, and I like Steph Curry as a player, but instead of doing the hard thing, they want to run to the 3-point line and take the most fun shot, not the best shot, not the hardest shot, not what's best for the team, but what's best for you. That's what I see in most youth sports. Like, how can I become the main point of this team?
Yeah.
Which is why I like football. I love offensive linemen because you know who gets praised? Not offensive linemen.
Not them.
But
Never.
if you have a bad offensive line, you are worth absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And those 5 guys suffer. Like, if you've ever seen a pile in the middle of a field, it's not pretty. If you can ask any guy that's been in the bottom of those piles. People take cheap shots.
Yeah.
But those guys are selfless. And I've always appreciated selfless offensive linemen because they make a team better. But a lot of youth sports is how can I be the star? How can I take the shot? And we need, there's times where players need to learn what it means to be able to focus during those pressure points. But we forgot what it means to be a team, it seems like, in sports. Yeah. And how do you teach that when everybody they watch is all about themselves too?
Yeah. And, moving to or transferring to different schools. And,
stupid NIL.
Yeah, I would agree for sure. As a parent, do you think James will play sports?
Yeah.
Do you think your girls will play sports?
Yeah, I think they'll try it. Our rule growing up, and at least in my house, was you had to play one sport.
Yeah.
And my mother never pushed us to play college. When I got to the point where that kind of became a question, like, could you play in college? It was a cool thought because it could help financially. But it never was, your goal in life is to be a professional athlete. Yeah. It was, you learn athletics to help learn toughness and adversity. And I really enjoyed it. I love the physicality of it.
Yeah.
But I do want the kids to at least try it into high school. I think James, I don't know, because he's only 10 months, so we're still kind of figuring out. He's a typical little boy. He loves to wrestle. He loves it when I throw him around. Yeah. But so do the girls. They love soccer. When we go outside, the first thing they do is grab a basketball and a soccer ball.
Yeah. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah. Nice. On Saturday mornings, they wake up. Daddy, can we watch football?
Yeah.
Can we watch soccer?
Yes.
And right now, the Six Nations is happening, which is a rugby tournament. And because I'm really into rugby right now. So they'll sit down. They'll watch a whole rugby match.
Wow.
Yeah. So we love sports in our house.
Yeah.
We also love Daniel Tiger, but they'll choose sports over Daniel Tiger.
Wow. That's impressive.
Yeah.
Man. Wow.
So we'll see.
Yeah.
Christina was a sprinter in high school.
Okay.
Yeah.
So a runner?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So is Taya going to play sports? She's already playing soccer.
Yeah. She's playing basketball right now. She plays soccer. Can I tell you that I reffed her game 2 weeks ago?
How was that as a parent?
So this is what happened.
See, what happened was...
What had happened was there were a couple of times when, she got fouled pretty hard. Did I call the foul? Nope. And in my head, I was like, no, she needs to be tough.
That's right.
No, you got to play through that.
Yeah.
Like, come on. So, I don't know. Maybe I need a lesson in grace and compassion. I'm not really sure, but that's how the Parlins roll. And then, of course, Dean is coaching, and he looks at me, and I'm like, got to get tough. And this is kindergarten basketball, by the way. So, but no, it's all good.
Yeah, I don't want to coach my kids. I will also say that.
Dean loves it. We would prefer it. We prefer it. Yeah. Yep. He's a great coach. He's such a great coach.
Go Dean.
Yeah.
Go Dean. Better man than I.
He's great. He is cool.
I think I'd lose my temper.
You'd be surprised.
About how bad I'd lose my temper?
No. You'd be surprised. Yeah. You'd be surprised. Well, Jared, thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. Thanks for letting me come hang out.
Yeah, thanks for joining the conversation on toughness and toughness versus strength. You're pretty strong. And what you've been through has made you tough.
I appreciate that.
So, well, thanks for listening in. Hey, find us online at lcsportsandrec.com and join us in the conversation around toughness. Thanks for listening. We'll see y'all next time. Man, thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed hearing us ramble about youth sports or other strangely interesting sports topics related to families, please go and like and subscribe to the show. so that you can get regular updates when a new podcast is released. We'd also love to connect with you. Head on over to our socials. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. We're under LC Sports and Recreation.
And if you're new to our podcast, go check out some of our previous episodes on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. There's some good stuff on there. And pay attention because these come out pretty quickly, weekly, as a matter of fact. And you're going to learn a lot about what we have to say with regards to our league and how to win with the home team.